Evening, everyone. I'm Michael Brown, president of SAR, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this first event, and maybe the loudest and most fun of the events we're doing for the American Identities Festival. Thanks for coming. Tonight, Delbert Anderson, who's Diné, as you know, and his bandmates will perform music that's inflected by Indigenous music, but also has elements of funk and jazz, and it's going to be really fun. Delbert Anderson Quartet is led by jazz trumpeter and composer Delbert Anderson. He's both a leader and an innovator in today's jazz music scene, and I don't need to say much more about it. You'll find out in about 30 seconds. I should mention, though, and I just learned this talking to Delbert yesterday, that he is going to be performing at the Kennedy Center in May at the Mary Lou Williams Jazz Festival. It's like May 10 to 12, something like that. Big venue, really important venue for a young jazz artist. So that's a metric of just how good a musician he is and where he's likely to go. Just finally, please remember to silence your cell phones, mute them, turn them off, even better. And let's enjoy the performance. I give you the Delbert Anderson Quartet.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. This first song we're going to start off with is called Groove Warrior. All right. Yeah, man. Everybody good? Khalill Brown on drums. Yeah. That was Robert Muller on keys. Yeah. This is called Ebola Blues. Mike McCluhan on bass. Yeah. This next tune is called Losing My Mind. And it's a song that was released recently, back in March 8th. We released a album entitled DDAT, Kindred Spirits, a Navajo and South African Story. And this album features not only DDAT in the rhythm section, but every guest artist was from either the Zulu tribe or Khoisan tribe. And it's a very great album, and I encourage all of you to go out there. It's kind of a little hard to navigate because they actually put an apostrophe in between DDAT, so when you're looking for it, make sure it's D''DAT, and then it should come up there. The singer who was on this piece, her name is Nalesiwe Mountsweni, and she's from the Zulu tribe. Unfortunately, we couldn't fly her in from South Africa tonight, but she's not only a great singer and vocalist, but she also raps. And so when you listen to this tune, she raps about losing her mind, and she actually inputs some of the I forget what sort of language she comes from, but you can hear kind of like the clicks and the pops in her voice when she's rapping. So I thought that was very cool. This is called Losing My Mind. Yeah, and at the very end of the track, Nelly says, "Losing my mind, ah ha 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 ha." So I always, every time we end that, I always hear that in my head. This next tune is a ballad that was written for the monument called the Ark, and it's located in Aztec, New Mexico. And we were very fortunate last year to be selected by the Bureau of Land Management to have a legitimate partnership to bring music into these lands, to connect culture, to connect the BLM and the Indigenous people. And we were aiming for 8 sites last year, but only 5 were approved. And it was a very tough thing. But I wanted to share a tiny story of how the arts was, healed the relationship. It was in the Mecca Flats, the Warm Springs Confederated Tribe. He was a chief that was there, and the spiritual leader was there, and then there's the BLM officials. And it was kind of one of the first go at doing this project. So the first thing when I looked over, the chief was walking over to the BLM officials, and I thought, oh, okay, here we go. And he said, we've been trying to reach out to you guys for 6-7 years. We want to move our salmon bake back to the traditional lands, but you guys saying we can't. And he was like, what's the deal? And so the BLM official said, well, we have tons. I get like 22,000 emails a day. It's very hard to keep it, all segregated and answer to everyone. And so he said, oh, well. He's like, well, now you know. And after that, we sat down and we talked, and we were I think when we started to focus on the music and the stories of the land, all these indigenous stories and culture, it really brought everyone down to like a human being level. No one was listening to their title or position or guidelines. When I started to see that happening in this group we had, I told the BLM official, like, what is it? Can it really be done? And kind of re-asked what the chief was asking. And he said, there's a ton of paperwork. It's really hard. But he goes, let me ask. Let me just ask. Who knows? And so the next day when we were meeting for sort of a workshop. This chief has this really old, beat up like Dodge Ram truck. And the BLM official went over there and had this piece of paper and slammed it on his hood. And he said, when you sign this, you're going to have your traditional lands back to where you can have your salmon bakes now. And so, yeah. So the BLM official kind of looked at the chief looked at the BLM official and said, are you sure it's okay to sign? Because last time we signed, our land got taken away. And this guy was like, no, you're good. But it just shows. And the chief came over to me and said, if you were never here, if this project never existed, this would have never happened. And so it's such a powerful thing. And this is kind of this next piece we're going to play sort of is composed in the same way we were making these songs with all of the different tribes that we visited. But this arc, there's a little stream that goes right through it, and it's perfectly straight. It's untouched. It's just like a sandy little where a stream used to be. And I thought it was kind of funny because, I'm looking for rocks or footprints or, something on, in this sand, but it was just perfectly straight, and it went right through this arc. And all around it is, there's all these trees, twigs, and this big arc. So it's like messy. It's like there's a lot going on, but I don't know how this like perfect little stream was formed and it's untouched, So I started to really think of what can represent the stream, and obviously the trumpet will do that tonight. But also there's a lot of other scenery around and many different things that is going on, and so the rhythm section is going to represent everything else. So you're going to hear a lot of changes, chord changes within the rhythm section, and the trumpet's just going to stay on one note. It's kind of an easy song, right? So, but the idea of it was, when there's many things going on, many different cultures, the world's pretty crazy, but if you can just, sometimes we need to focus back on to that component of just getting back to this stream and, being ourselves, putting it at the center. And the title of this piece is called Heart Passage. It's on this little stream thing, so yeah, Heart Passage. Thank you so much. Alrighty, we got about 10 minutes left, so we're going to go ahead and end with this last piece. Again, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the band again one more time. Mike McCluhan on bass. Khalill Brown on drums. Robert Muller on keys. And I'm Delbert Anderson on trumpet. Thank you. So I was talking to my mother earlier, and she told me not to explain anything before we play Iron Horse Gallop. And but you know, I think if you never heard the song, it deserves its due diligence. But this song, every time we play it, there's always something random that happens to the band. Like, the window would break, Mike's bass would fall over, wind turbines would crush tents where we're playing, sound systems falling over. This is all real too. I'm not making these up. But every time we play this tune, we walk into when we went to Dulce to play there one night, and it was dark clouds, and you could hear the thunder, and we were there debating, like, should we play Iron Horse? Because we think it just feels natural disasters or something. But I said this joke. We were just playing in Seattle about a week ago at the Royal Room, and I told everyone, be careful for the next 24 hours after you hear this song. In all good, it's a great song. It's about a journey that we took from Gallup, New Mexico to Los Angeles, and we rode the Amtrak, which was very uncomfortable, and so you can kind of hear that in the tune, hopefully. But this is Iron Horse Gallop. Thank you guys so much for being here. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, man. Birdie. Dave, yeah. Hey, Milton. Yeah, man. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, Delbert, SAR, in terms of our Indian arts programming, is known for our pottery in particular. We actually have 100 pots at the Metropolitan Museum in New York right now. So if you're in New York in the next 10 or 11 months, I hope you'll stop in and see Grounded in Clay. But when I talk to potters, contemporary potters, I say, like, how'd you get interested in this? Who was your role model? They say, well, I watched my grandmother make pots at the kitchen table. I have a feeling your grandmother didn't make jazz at the kitchen table. So could you just talk a little bit about how you got interested in this and what your path has looked like?
Yeah, I was actually brought up through the education system. So around fourth grade, they let us choose an instrument. But before we started to choose anything, they would bring in a sort of a band, like a chamber ensemble that would demonstrate all of these instruments for us. But the band literally got a flat tire on the way to the gig, and it's a big assembly. All the kids were there, and they brought in a jazz band because it was the easiest to put together. And it was a trio. It was a trombone player, bass player, and drummer. And he had this music stand in front of him the entire time, and they were playing, I believe it was probably standards. And so he got the kids going. Everyone was, yelling and screaming. And then at the very end, he turned his music stand around. And all of us, I remember we all kind of like murmured like, oh no, and and he just started playing. And to me, I was looking at this music stand and seeing his music and looking at him, and he wasn't using it, and I thought that was like the coolest thing. And he was going crazy. I think they were playing like Cherokee or something, and he was going, and I was just like, whoa, what's going on, And at the very end, he said that what he was doing was called improvisation. And then after that, he said, music doesn't come from the page, it comes from inside yourself. And so that really like stuck to me. And the very next day, I went to go choose the trombone and picked it up, and that's all that happened. And so the guy's like, maybe you need something a little smaller for your face. And he's like, go try the trumpet. And I went there and I squeaked out like two little notes. And he said, you're a trumpet player, man. So, and I had friends there that were telling me, let's play clarinet or drums, or, and I was like, no, I think I'm going to stick with the trumpet. And he kept hounding me like to play clarinet. And I was like, why do you want to play clarinet? And he's like, that's where all the girls sit. And so, so at the time, I really just wanted to imitate this trombone player. So I got my horn. They didn't even give me a mouthpiece yet, but they gave me a trumpet, and I ran back to where I was living, and I put this, there was a spinning chair that we had in our living room, and I just grabbed a random book, and I put it on there, and I said, don't worry, guys, music comes from the heart. And I turned the music stand or the the chair around, and I started to play. Whatever came out. And, in sixth grade, that's when I was introduced to not only jazz ensemble, but they also put me in the community jazz band in Farmington. So there's a picture out there with the trumpet section, the 5-piece trumpets in the back. They're all standing, and they're all really tall. And at the very end, second chair they put me on, and I was like an itty bitty guy there. And I remember I was trying to be tall, so my face was doing this. And Like, but yeah, that's how it all started. It was improvisation. It was I wanted to be cool. I wanted to not have music in front of me and be able to play. That's what really got me into it. But later on, I would start to meet some of my mentors. Started to really get educated when I went to college at Eastern New Mexico University. And my teacher was a tenor saxophonist, and he never once told me like, you're doing that wrong or whatever. He just really let me explore. And every time there was a guest artist that would come in, he would always schedule like a 1-hour mentorship talk and like a 2-hour lesson. So they became like friends, and now I can still like call him up and ask him, when I'm having trouble with something, or they kind of brought me up without. I didn't really know what they were doing, but finally, when I started the trio, I said, "Oh, okay, that's why they were teaching me all this stuff," But it was an incredible journey, and it still is. The band's been together for about 10 years now. And we had some recent changes, but very good changes. And it feels like we're barely getting started now after, 10 years. So, yeah.
Wow. So one of the things you're known for, aside from being a really good trumpet player, is your interest in the indigenization of jazz. And I wonder if you could talk about what that means to you. Is it really about modes and scales and rhythms, or is there something deeper or different that makes the music, or that speaks to the indigenous side of your background?
Yeah, I was just at a conference called Western Arts Alliance, and they were asking a lot of questions, and former business partner of mine, Julia Keefe, she's from the Nez Perce tribe. She's a Brooklyn jazz vocalist. She said, "Your existence, you being on stage just there, is a statement, and it's enough." And because we're always asked okay, how do the natives do it? How does the Navajo compose? That kind of thing. And it's something that, quite honestly, for me, it was learning my own culture, because I grew up non-traditional, and when the band got together, we played jazz standards for 2 days. And we said, we sound like every other jazz combo in the world right now. And so I told all the guys, let's dig a little deeper and play what you really want to play. And at the time, Nick was a funk Latin drummer. Mike is a Deadhead, Grateful Dead. And, so he really brought the jam aspect of these tunes. And I really love jazz, so I thought, I'll bring improvisation to this music. But then I started to think I don't know what my original Diné music is, and so I went to, this was in Aztec at the time, and I found this little cassette tape saying spinning songs of the 1920s, Navajo spinning songs. So I started to listen to it, and just really getting inspired by the modes, because a lot of early Native American music is in minor pentatonic, and so it's very easy to just do that and slap on a melody or whatnot. But the places in the music of this cassette tape that really began to almost speak to me in a way, I would take that sort of riff or whatever it was, it might have just been an interval, and I would really kind of push it around and push it out of this minor pentatonic mode, but just trying to see, experiment and try to be creative. And within a few days, I would start to hum to myself. And this was because I was listening to all of these spinning songs. So I'd be walking around going, and I'm like, what am I singing? I'm not really. And so that's kind of how it just grew on me. They say if you want to learn how to play jazz, you listen to jazz, and for me, it was like I was listening to my ancestors, and I felt this really cool connection, wow. And so before we started doing anything, one of the problems was, of course, appropriation. And you might think it's weird, how can I appropriate my own music, my own Diné music? But, I went to the elders and I asked them, I said, is it okay if I be inspired by these melodies, and they're all social songs. We're not playing any like sacred anything or ceremonial type music, but I told them, can I play these social songs and share it with everyone, but also add my own flavor to it as like a jazz musician? And it was incredible what they said. They said, if you asked us 10, 15 years ago, we would probably have said no. But they said, because a lot of our youth is no longer interested in our music, they're not learning our songs anymore, they said, you got to do what you got to do. And they gave me full approval to utilize all of these spinning songs. And they also said, the spinning song is made to socialize. And so they said, your other two musicians that are with you, you're actually caught up into this like tornado deal. And a tornado sucks up everything around it. And so I thought it was a very cool, analogy. And they said, whatever it spits out, it spits out. So, we have like Khalill Brown, who's a Rastafarian, from Denver, New York native, Mike McCluhan, who's just used to play in a lot of rock and roll country bands. And then Robert Muller, who just had his, great hip hop band in Portland, New York, and just, very versatile. And we're all, we all agree, but we also all disagree. So, but caught up in this spinning song, it's like we're really learning a lot about one another, and it's a great way to show people that people with different races, cultures can actually make something great happen. And I feel that's what we do up here when we're playing. And that's kind of for me, that's like me indigenizing this great music, jazz. So.
What about when you work when you work with the Indigenous big band? Are you picking up riffs from other tribes, other backgrounds?
Yeah, we were trying to follow the model of the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra with Wynton Marsalis, and all of their musicians in the big band, they all compose. And so there's a few of us, we're still brand new, but the Julia Keefe Indigenous Big Band, we have like Molly Obamsawin, who's from Maine. I believe she's from the Abenaki tribe, and she wrote a great song called Blood Quantum that we premiered, and everyone just loved it. It was very free form, but it was very chant heavy, and it was really, really cool. We have Rico Jones, who's from Denver area, and I believe Quechua, I think it was like a Quechua indigenous tribe of him, and he wrote this. It's going to be a suite, but he wrote this piece called Water. And it was from sort of like Quechua folk tunes that he found, and then I also have the DDAT suite within the big band, which features a song called Attention, Narbona, and also Iron Horse that you've heard. So yeah, and it's all comes from our own culture, so it's just such a beautiful project. And for those of you who don't know, the Julia Keefe Indigenous Big Band will be headlining the Mary Lou Williams Jazz Festival at the Kennedy Center next May. Yeah, and with special guest artist Esperanza Spalding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Can you talk a little bit about DDAT, because we don't know much about it, or I don't know much about it. It's a different configuration.
Yeah,
different
well, we before, I believe around 2015, we had a gentleman named Christopher Mike Bidta, who was a rapper from Albuquerque area, and he joined the group, and we submitted for the NPR Tiny Desk competition, and no lie, it was like 11:58, and I had to figure out a name for us, and we were brand new, so I didn't know what to call ourselves, and we were already kind of known as DAT just because Delbert Anderson Trio, and I thought, well, Defy his rap name, so we'll just make it DDAT. And so I put it in and submitted it, and we ended up getting top 10 honorable mention from NPR that year. So that name had to stick. So that's originally that's what DDAT is. It was our trio with Defy, and when Defy went and started doing more solo work, We then had another artist come in who was also a rapper, James Pacotis from Spokane, Washington. And we worked with him for about a year and a half. And we just still called it DDAT. Okay. And so that name just sort of grew. And, we're in the process of, many switches right now. We had this band got together about, I would say, anywhere from 8 months to a year ago. And, not even that, probably less, maybe 5-6 months ago. And we're still trying to figure that out. In fact, right before the show started, we're going to be opening a theater called the Prax Center out in at OSU Corvallis area, and the marketer was calling me saying, "Are you DDAT? Are you Anderson Quartet? Like, what are you guys? I don't know what's going on. It's so confusing." So, we're in transition still. So I don't know where the name's going to go or what, but I love playing with these guys. They're great. We really have like a brotherhood walking around. If you hear weird noises or anything that, it's all inside stuff that we're always doing. So I just learned a thing called the seal call from a Yupik guy. His name is Stephen Blanchette with Bamya. I think he played here. He has this seal call. This is funny, but he always says, he's like, that's a seal call. So now I just say that to anything. Like Robert's like, "Hey, Delbert, what's up, man?" And he's like, "All right," So, we have a lot of things like that. And these guys are great, great human beings. Yeah.
I think we got time for a couple of questions from the audience. Could we get the lights on? Because I'm not going to be able to see who's got their hand up. I see this gentleman has his hand up. Okay.
Festivals that take place anywhere around the country where they bring together other groups like you and others you've mentioned, of where we could go and hear a number of native jazz groups playing.
The same guy who taught me the seal call, he actually created one of the very first indigenous festivals out in, it's called Ak Rock, and it's actually going on, I think it starts about a week from now up in Juneau, Alaska. But he's bringing in all different types of cultures, from rap to classical to jazz. And we were actually invited, but we declined because we were supposed to be in South Africa right now. But, we sort of ran into some issues there, so we ended up staying. But I wish I could be a part of it. It's the very first festival this year. And just a ton of different lineups. Julia Keefe would be there, Molly Obamswin, Chantal Ducart. These are all great indigenous artists, all jazz. And there's even more in hip hop, especially. There's just tons. And so for now, that's the only one I know. But I think a lot of festivals are beginning to pick up this. They call it BIPOC initiative. The Black Indigenous People of Color movement, where a lot of these venues and festivals are going to save 70% more or hire 70% BIPOC artists and 30% sort of like non-BIPOC. So hopefully that will kind of change. And it's all about getting the main voice out there. These old Native voices, and I don't like to say old. It's still brand new, and it still holds its own power that it has. And I just believe that we can learn a lot from indigenous wisdom. In fact, I just received a sort of an offer from Wilfrid Laurier University out in Waterloo, Canada, who wants to hire me, not to play music or teach music, but she wants me to implement indigenous teachings into their curriculum and infrastructure. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
How about another question? Anybody out there? Yes, ma'am.
Yate. It was so great to be here. Thank you. I'm just wondering, how did you get connected to South Africa? I brought a group of indigenous women to South Africa in 2018, and we were there to visit the Cradle of Humanity, but I'm just curious what your connection is there.
Yeah, there's a very great woman. Her name is Catherine McVickers, and she's the executive director for sort of a talent agency called Music Works International, and they have some of the greatest artists like Joshua Redman, John Faddis, Pat Metheny, and so they work at a very high level. And she said, "Oh, there's this gentleman from South Africa that's looking for someone to represent the United States." And she said, "I thought it'd be great that it would be an indigenous group that would represent the U.S." And this guy, his name is Dan Corbally, and he's more of a tour promoter, but he was working on this album called Solidarity Express. And volume 2 already is out right now, but the second volume is what we're going to be featured on. And there's other artists on there like Crowded House, Neil Finn, Phil Manzanera, Bonnie Raitt. They're all going to be on this album. And it's just like, wow. And when he told me what type of song can you bring, I thought it was very meaningful to not only have a native voice, but a female voice. So I asked a friend of mine, Alexandria Rose Holiday, who used to be like a Navajo princess, Diné princess, and she had this song called Grandma's Song. And so she sang it, she sings it in Navajo. And this is actually on the South Africa album that I was talking about earlier. And Nellie also would sing in her own language about her grandmother, but it became this crazy movement, because in South Africa, they don't really allow like females to lead anything or to run anything still. And so to see those two up on the forefront singing their own languages, and it was all about honoring the matriarch of indigenous tribes. And it was so powerful, like everyone was like crying and they just thought it was great. And it was a really great moment. Well, after we started sending these recordings to Dan Corbally, he said, we're going to start WOMAD in South Africa next year. And he said it'd be great to like have indigenous voices in this festival. And so, after that, it's kind of, that's when we clicked. And he told me that if I could get there, he'll take care of us. So I applied for a grant from Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation. And we got this grant entitled USA Artists, and they were able to pay our per diems and flights and so forth. So that's kind of how that South Africa connection happened, and it's still going strong. They're thinking of bringing us to one of the bigger WOMAD festivals like the UK and everything. So it was just a crazy idea that I forget the guy who started WOMAD. Is Mike? Yeah, Peter Gabriel. So it was just funny that he had to sign off on us at some point. Like we came across his desk, okay, yeah, let's do this, But it was fantastic. It was a great time. Yeah.
Maybe one more question. I want these guys to get their dinner before they roll up the streets in Santa Fe, which, as you know, is pretty early. Yes, you in the back.
Can you tell us about your trumpet? It looks rather unusual for jazz trumpet players.
Yeah, it's I guess in general it's kind of a cross between a flugelhorn and a normal trumpet. It's actually from Switzerland. It's called the company is called Inderbinnen. And that's just a family name, Tom and Susie Inderbinnen, and they only have 8 workers in their whole company, and they're backed by like 6 years. So if you want to get an instrument for them, they're very high quality. Guys like Randy Brecker, Arturo Sandoval, they all play on Inderbinnens, and that's one of them. But I wanted the Big Bell series because it just kind of looked funky, and I kind of liked how it played. I went to NAMM back in like 2016, and was able to meet Tom, the owner, and he said, "Hey man, you sound good on this." And I was like, yeah, everyone, is going to say that to make a sell. So I kept sending him like articles that were coming out, trying to get an endorsement from him. And then finally, I think like a Smithsonian magazine released something, and he said, "Hey, maybe let's look at that endorsement." And I said, "Okay." I was like, "I want the big bell, but I don't want the body that I was playing on. I want a different body." So it's very custom, and although it was an endorsement, I still had to pay for it. I got a 75% discount though. but it was still $5,800. So that thing's yeah, it's a backup plan if I need a ride, you know. But it's raw brass, so it looks old, ancient, but it's a certain kind of metal. The more you hold it and your oils start to get on the metal, the more hard it gets. And so it's only going to keep sounding better and better as long as I have it. So it's a very cool instrument.
Well, I was going to simply say, please join me in thanking Delbert for an evening that we won't forget anytime soon. It's been great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.